Good day everyone and welcome to Jack's Cosplay. For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Brennan Jackson and I am a digital arts honours student at the University of the Witwatersrand in Johannesburg, South Africa. So as part of completing my honours studies in digital arts at university, we have to do a design project for our final project. And with this project, we have been given quite a bit of creative freedom to really pursue what it is we want to pursue. And being a huge fan of cosplay and prop making, I have decided to pursue my final project in the field of prop making. So what I hope to do for this project is I hope to build an epic fantasy sword. So I hope to create the fantasy world that the sword exists in, come up with the design of the sword, 3D model the sword, 3D print the sword, and then finish the prop, incorporate some LED lighting effects. And yeah, so that's what I hope to do for this project. So what this video is going to be is this video is going to be my design journal, my little behind the scenes of how I have bring this project to reality. So it is currently the month of September. So this project is due on the 10th of December. So I've just got over a couple of months to finish this project. So the first two things that I'm going to get started on for this project is I need to build a fantasy world that this epic fantasy sword belongs to, because I really want the narrative elements of this sword to really tie to its design. And then once I've built this fantasy world, I can go ahead and start coming up with designs of the sword and come to a finalized design so that I can begin the 3D modeling process of this project. So that's what I'm gonna do first for this project. So thank you for watching this video. Thank you for taking the time. So stick along if you're keen to embark on this journey with me to see what epic fantasy sword I can create and see the whole process behind it. It's time to start some world building and designing this epic fantasy sword. Archimera, the Peacebringer. It began when the heart of the star fell from the heavens. The gem, hidden inside a great meteor, carried power and strength, but also great beauty. It shone a myriad of bright and beautiful colors, and glowed so bright it could illuminate the darkest night. You see, darkness entered into the hearts of all who gazed upon the light of this gem. Few could imagine the years of bloodshed, war, and suffering that lay before the people living on the continent of Adatora. Nations turned against one another, old alliances were forgotten, and desire overtook even the purest of heroes. All the rulers of Adatora desired to possess the heart, to gaze upon its beauty and quench the fire of desire that was kindled within them when in the presence of the gem. For more than 30 years, the heart wars raged across Adatora. How could it be that an object so bright and beautiful could lead to such despair and darkness? The young King Bram of the Kingdom of Siosel had given his life to the pursuit of the gem. Having been born during the Heart Wars, he knew nothing of peace. After countless fierce battles and years of persevering, Bram had captured the heart of the star. With the gem in his possession, he made efforts to restore peace amongst the nations of Adatora, and assembled a conclave of all the rulers. Rulers from across all Adatora came to hear Bram speak, and listened as he shared his plans for peace and the prosperity of all in Adatora. They sat in silence and watched Bram rise from his seat. Giving no warning, Bram threw the heart of the star upon the ground, drew his greatsword, and plunged it into the heart. It shattered into 1,000 pieces, and its power was dispelled across the lands of Adatora. But something happened that Bram could not have predicted. Remnants of the beauty and power of the heart infused into Bram's sword. The runes along the blade shone from the power of the heart, and as Bram held the sword, he began to feel the power flow through him. With the heart destroyed, the war was ended, and each ruler took a small fragment of the gem to return to their lands. As the years passed on, Archimera's power faded, yet its brilliant glow prevailed, waiting upon the day that a descendant of the line of King Bram reawakens the power within. Okay, so I have now mostly finished the design phase of this project. So what I've done is I've got this piece of paper here which has got
3 different sword designs on it. So these are the 3 like semi-finalist designs that I've created for this sword and for this project. And each of these designs here have got different elements that I like. So some of them I like the blade profile, some of them I like the handle details, some of them I like the blade details. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to draw a full 1-to-1 scale version of this sword on some paper here, which will really help me to see if there's anything that needs to be changed, what the proportions of this blade are going to look like in real life, because obviously this is a 1/5 drawing, 1/5 scale drawing. So some things may be a bit unrealistic or not possible. So what I'm going to do is draw it at 1-to-1, see what changes need to be made, and that will hopefully be my final version. So let's go ahead and start doing that. Okay, so I have finished drawing up this 1-to-1 scale drawing design of the sword, and I must say I am so happy with how this design has turned out. Like seeing it in full scale, like it's one thing to see it drawn to scale, but when you see it at full scale and like you can imagine it coming to life, it's really truly awesome, as you can think, okay, how am I going to do this? This is going to be the size, how's it going to feel when I hold it in my hands? And I'm so happy with this design. I'm so happy with all the proportions of everything. So the next thing to do is to go ahead and to start 3D modeling the sword. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start modeling the sword up in Blender. Okay, so there we go. You will have just seen some footage of the 3D modeling process, which means that I am finished with the design of this sword and the 3D modeling. So the footage that you just saw of the 3D modeling, that isn't the final 3D model, just because after I'd modeled what you just saw there, I noticed a few errors and I made a few really stupid decisions that basically resulted in a lot of non-manifold geometry, and that would have really caused some problems when it comes to the 3D printing process. So I went back and I redid a few parts. One of the major parts that I redid was the blade, just because I wasn't happy with how that was looking and there was too much geometry going on there. So I redid that. But yeah, so the 3D modeling of the sword is done, and there'll be some images somewhere of the different parts of it rotating so that you can see what it looks like. So now we'll be able to move on to the 3D printing process. So the printing is going to be done with PLA 3D filaments. So I'm not using a resin printer, even though it would result in a high level of detail, but resin is more expensive. So I'm just going to be using a standard filament printer. And as you can see here, I've got some 3D printing filaments. So this is Cron PLA transparent. And I'm going to be using the transparent filaments for the blade of the sword, because as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be LEDs in the sword. So by using transparent with about a 10 to 15% infill, I'll be able to put the LEDs behind it and let the LED light shine through. So let me just open a box here. So here's 1 kilo roll of filament. So I've got 3 of these. So this should be enough for the sword, for the blade. And then the rest of the sword, the handle, the crossguard, the pommel, that can really be printed in any color available, because, well, it's going to be painted and none of it has to have any light shining through it. So what I'm going to do today is I'm actually going through to Wits University campus, and the School of Electrical Engineering at Wits has very kindly offered to allow me to use their printers to print my project. So I'm going to go through there today, take this filament, speak to the guy who's in charge of there, and hopefully start printing this cool fantasy sword. Okay, so I am on Wits campus now. I'm currently sitting in my car. But yeah, so it's really great to be back on campus. They've opened up a few small workspaces and whatnot, but obviously I've been mostly online for the past 2 years, or year and a half, 18 months. because of COVID and everything, so the university went completely online. So it's really great to be back here on campus today. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head on up to the lab where the printers are. I'm going to speak to the guy who's in charge, hand over the filaments, and hopefully start printing. I probably won't be able to record any footage of the actual printing process, just because I don't really want to leave any cameras here unattended, because obviously I'm not going to be able to monitor the whole time while it's printing, just because I'm not going to be here. So I won't be able to leave any cameras unattended. If I do manage to like come in on certain days when it's printing, I will try and record what I can, but they probably won't be much. So probably the next time you'll see from me is when I have got all the parts printed. But actually, wait, no, there's some electronics work. There is some electronics work and soldering coming up first, which I will do before the printing. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and try and get that stuff printed now. Okay, so a quick update on the 3D printing for this project. So last year you've seen me, I was in my car and I was saying I was going to go take some transparent PLA filament to the guy who's doing the printing for me and get the blade printed. So there have been a few issues. So the transparent PLA that I was hoping to use for this project, unfortunately, I don't know whether it's just not a very common size of PLA, it's 3mm, or it's not very common to use it in transparent. So I think the stock that I got was old stock, which means it was a bit faulty, and no other company seems to have it. I don't know if there's a shortage at the moment or anything. So I've tried multiple rolls of that, but the stuff kept breaking. So whenever we put it in the 3D printer, it would break into smaller pieces. If we had it sitting on the table, it would break. It just wasn't flexible enough, and I think it was probably just because it was a bit of old stock. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be instead printing the blade in plain white PLA filament, and then I will cut out the parts that need to be illuminated with a jeweler's saw and put some transparent clear acrylic sheeting behind, which I'll frost with a bit of frosting spray paint. So that's what we'll do. In the meantime, I do have an update though on the handle of the sword that has been printed. So if you look over here, so here's one piece. This is part of the handle for the sword. So this has been printed in a plain white PLA filament. So this is what the whole sword will be printed in. So I've got it printed for the handle, two parts of the crossguard. So yeah, I'm still waiting for the blade to be printed. I'll probably get that in the next few days. But what I can do in the meantime is I can start working on the handle, because that's something I need to do. So I'm gonna go head up to my local hardware store, which is Builder's Warehouse, and I'm gonna get a few things I need for some finishing of 3D printing. So I'm gonna get lots of sandpaper, some primer, some wood filler, super glue, all the stuff I need. So let's go ahead and get some supplies. Okay, so there we go, we've finished the Builder's Warehouse. I've got some sandpaper, some wood filler, some cyanoacrylate or super glue, as most people know it. I wasn't able to get any grey primer, they didn't have any, so I will probably go and get some from another place somewhere. I don't know if I'll go get that today. I don't really need that straight away, but yeah. Also, sorry about the quality of the recording in the store. I wasn't really sure if I had permission to film in the store. I didn't ask anyone, so I was trying to be kind of discreet, holding my phone recording, so sorry about that. So I'm going to head home now and I'm going to start doing some of the prep work, so cleaning up the 3D prints, removing some of the supports or the remnants of the printing process, so on the insides, sanding, gluing together, and getting to work on that. Okay, so as you can see here, we have got some of the handle pieces printed. So for starters, we've got these two pieces here, which will connect, and this will be the handle of the sword. We have got the two pieces for the crossguard here, so these will be glued together to form the crossguard. We've got the pommel, which will come on the end here, and then we have also got the first two pieces of the bottom of the blade. So this is how I would like to call this part the upper handle. So how this piece is going to come is, this will be inside there like this, and the first part of the blade above the crossguard is actually also going to have a leather wrap around it, so that the person wielding it could change to a different stance if they wanted to, something like a German Zweihander or a Scottish Claymore sword. So as you can see here, if you look in this part here, this bottom part of the handle, there's still a bunch of support stuff there. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove some of that now. And I just want to start cleaning these up. I've got an assortment of sandpapers here, everything from a 60 all the way up to a 1200. This was the highest grit I could find at Builder's Warehouse. Maybe I will find some other higher grits at a different place. So I'm gonna start doing that. For the handle here, I don't have to worry too much about getting rid of the print lines on these parts here, because, well, this is all gonna be wrapped in leather, or a faux leather vinyl for the grip of the sword. So these parts don't have to worry about being sanded, or these parts are all gonna be covered. But like you see here, so the fit between here and where it inserts into the handle, there is a bit of a snug fit. So I wanna go ahead and just make that a bit smaller, just so that it fits nicer, so it all fits together. Same part with here and here. And obviously this part is gonna need a lot of cleanup to get rid of the print lines. This part as well. And when these parts are glued together, I'm just gonna be using some cyanoacrylate glue. I've also got some alkaline wood filler, which I'm gonna go over the seams. I'm gonna fill the seams in with some alkaline wood filler, and then I will let that dry, and then I will also sand that away smooth, just so that we can get rid of some seam lines. So that is what we're gonna be doing today. So let's go ahead and start preparing these 3D prints. Okay, so by now you will have seen a whole lot of footage of me gluing and sanding the sword. So a lot of the sanding to this point has been done. I will be doing quite a bit more sanding a bit later, but I wanted to do some more of the actual construction of the blade right now. So if we look at, for example, one of the half blades over here, so you'll also notice I also put some wood filler on all the joins, and which I've sanded down just so I can try and hide those seams a bit more. So the sword is really starting to take shape, and I'm absolutely loving how it turns out. Like, let me just assemble it quickly and show you how cool this thing is gonna be. Okay, so here we go. This thing is shaping up to be pretty darn cool. I'm not even sure if the whole thing is in the shot right now, so I'll just move it around a bit so you can see. But this thing is shaping up to be pretty darn cool, and I think this is possibly gonna be one of the coolest things I've ever made. But I'm really liking how it works. So there's a few things I want to do to the sword now to finish up the actual construction of it before I can start working on to refining it and finishing it up. So one of those things is obviously I need to put the LEDs inside of the sword. And in order to do that, what I have done is I've actually got a piece here of some 3mm acrylic perspex sheeting. And as you can see here, I basically just kind of balanced it on top of the sword, and I just took a permanent marker and I marked out the piece that I want to cut out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out this piece, and what this piece will do is it will glue inside the blade here. So it will give the blade a bit more strength and rigidity, but it will also allow me to glue the LEDs into the blade without having them right up against the plastic, because I don't want the LEDs right up against the edge of the blade, because then there isn't really a way for the light to diffuse, because you'll get hot spots of light. So I'll show a video of that I did a test of the lights coming through the sword. So I want them kind of like suspended in the middle. So this will be perfect for that. I can glue LEDs on either side here, and it's clear, so it won't interfere with any of the light there, and it'll allow me to suspend the LEDs probably about probably about 8 centimeters away from the surface of where the LEDs will be shining out of. So yeah, so that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this out with the Dremel tool, and then I will start putting the LEDs on here, and we can start the final construction of this sword. Okay, so I think I should give a bit of an update with what I've been doing here with all the electronics of the project. So I can't remember if I gave a summary beforehand or not, but I'm just going to give a quick summary of how the electronics for this sword are working. So here I've got some WS2812 LED strips. So these are addressable LED strips, which means I can change each color of the strip independently to create some cool light animations. Now to control that, I'm just using a small Arduino Nano, because it is going to fit relatively well into the handle of the sword. To power that is I'm actually using an 18650 lithium-ion battery. But the problem with these is they give out 3.7 volts, and the Arduino and the lights require 5 volts. So I had a look around to see what I could do to take my battery from 3.7 volts to 5 volts, and I found this. Now what this is this is a circuit board of a standard power bank. And standard power banks, they use 3.7 volt batteries, and they put out 5 volts to charge your phone. So I got a couple of these, and I've hooked one up here to the battery holder, which then plugs into the Arduino in order to power it. And so this can be used to charge the batteries for the sword, as well as to convert the 3.7 volts, step it up to a 5 volt to power the Arduino and to power the lights. Now this might not be the best solution, but it is the solution I found. Also, there's currently quite a big global shortage of chips and wire and all sorts of things like that. So a lot of the other methods that I came across just weren't really an option because some of the parts aren't available in South Africa, or they would have taken a couple of months to ship. So this is the best solution that I could find with the deadline that I'm currently working with. So if we go ahead here and plug the power bank circuit into the Arduino. Now the Arduino is hooked up to the lights here, and there's just a bit of test code on there to control the lights. It's not the final code I'm going to be using because I want to change the colors and everything. And if I plug in my battery, we should. There we go, it's starting up. And you can see here the lights are working. I'm not too sure how well these are showing up on camera, because I do have a huge bit of light coming from that side because I've got the workshop door open and I've got some other lights. But as you can see here, the lights are working, and it's just a simple bluish, green, purple animation of the lights pulsing. So I just soldered some leads on here and connected it all up. Now remember I said that I wanted to print the pieces for the blade that are going to be illuminated in a transparent PLA, and I've already discussed, I think, how there were all the issues with the PLA, and so I was just printing it in white, and I was going to try and cut out all these pieces here with a jeweler's saw. Well, that has proved to be more difficult than possible just because I underestimated how small these details are. But the plastic here, where these lights, where the runes are, is fairly thin. And if, I don't know how well you can see this on camera, but if I just put the LEDs behind there, the plastic here does a fairly decent job of diffusing the light. So I think that is what I'm going to do. I am just going to not paint the inside of the runes there with anything. I'm not going to fill them in. I might put like a little bit of a clear coat on them just so that they look a bit nicer, but I'm not going to paint them over with anything. And then I'll be able to put the lights behind, and the lights will be able to shine through. Now you probably can't see this on camera just because of the amount of light, but from where I'm sitting, you can see the lights coming through the plastic fairly well. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. So okay, so I have made this piece which is going to go inside the blade. So I've cut this piece out of the acrylic perspex, and I have glued on all the LEDs that I want for the sword, and I've soldered them up. So as you can see, I've got 2 rows on each side, except for right up the top where I've just got 1 row because that's where the blade is quite a bit thinner. So yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue this into the sword, into the blade, and you can see that it fits fairly well in there. It just slots in just like that. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to glue that in, and then I'll be able to glue the 2 halves of the blade together, and then I'll be able to glue the blade into the handle and the crossguard and all that stuff. And this is where it's starting to really get exciting, because here's really the part where you get to hold this massive sword and you get to really start seeing it come to life. So I'm going to go ahead and start gluing all these pieces up. Okay, so I've finished gluing together the sword. So as you can see, the blade is glued into the crossguard glued to the handle, and the pommel is still detachable so I can access the electronics there at the back. And also the LED lights are glued onto the perspex, which is glued into the center of the blade. So now that all this is done and the sanding is done, I can start getting onto the paint job for the sword. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first give it a coat of grey spray primer to get all the surfaces ready for painting. But remember, as I mentioned, I don't want any paint in these areas here because that's where I want the light to shine through. So I'm going to do some masking there, but they're really small areas, and to be perfectly honest, I don't want to sit with some masking tape and a knife cutting really tiny intricate pieces to mask those areas off. So how I'm going to mask them instead is I'm going to be using something called press stick. Now this is called other things all around the world. We call it press stick in South Africa, but I know in other places in the world it's called things like blue tack. But basically what it is it's almost like a sticky plastic kind of gum type thing, which is used for pretty much sticking posters to walls. But it's got lots of other uses. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to take some of it and I'm going to put it in each of these little ruins that I want to mask off and smooth it over so that it's blocking out the ruins. So when I use the spray paint and the spray primer, none of the paint will get in there. So you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll show a close-up of putting some in, but that's what I'm going to do now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put some press stick into all these little ruins to mask them off, and then I'll be able to start using some grey spray primer and then starting the painting process of the sword. But I'm really loving how this is all coming together. Okay, so there we go. We have applied the base coat of primer. I applied probably about 3 to 4 layers of the grey primer with some sanding and some wood filling in between. And I've also applied probably about 3 coats of a spray black on here. Now there are still a few areas where you can see some of the print lines, but I'm gonna hopefully use some painting and weathering and battle damage techniques to hopefully hide a few of those crimes. So now that I've got this painted up, you'll notice I haven't painted this part here as well, or these parts here, because these parts are gonna be covered in fake leather. So I didn't really have to worry about getting good coverage on those areas. So now that we've got this painted up with a black base coat, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start doing some hand painting with some acrylic paints to really bring this blade to life. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so to go with the sword, I need some sort of way of displaying it / storing it. So I've decided I need to build a display case for it. So if you look behind me here, you can see parts of a display case, some doors drying over there, a little base for it down there. So basically what I've done is I've made a pretty basic display case just using some standard pine shelving. I wasn't able to record any of the process of actually making the display case because when I was working with some power tools such as routers and table saws and all that kind of stuff, I didn't want to be distracted by using a camera or having a camera anywhere that would distract me and take my focus away from the heavy machinery that I was using, just from a safety point of view. But what I'm doing now is I'm currently just doing some varnish, so I'm using a wood octane varnish with a rosewood stain, and I'm just varnishing it now, so I'll give it a pass with some water paper, varnish it, and put it together. So this is what's going to be the display case for the sword. Okay, so there we go. We have finished up the paint job on the sword. So we gave it a few different base colors. So we gave it a base color of some golds and some blues and stuff. And then what we did was we just went and we did a black wash with a mixture of black paints, brown paint, and water, put it on and wiped most of it off. But as you can see, it stayed in some of the crevices just to show and simulate like real dirt on a real sword. So perhaps it's been used in battle and quickly wiped off, and the dirt has accumulated in those little areas over time. The other thing that I also did was I went and I did some dry brushing. So you'll notice along the edge of the blade here, as well as on here. So on all the edges, I just went and did some dry brushing. So here I did it with some silver and some metallic blue, and here just with some silver. And that's to show that almost like as this has been used, it has the paint or whatever this is has chipped away over the years, just a little bit of battle damage, and this really just brings the prop to life. So now the next thing that we have to do is pretty much the last thing for the sword is we need to do the handles for the sword. So I have got 2 pieces of faux vinyl leather here. So I've got a gray and I've got a blue. So what I'm going to do is for these parts of the handle, I'm going to cut some strips of the fake leather to wrap around there for the handles. And for this part, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap it in cling wrap and some tape to pull a pattern from here, so that I can cut out one piece that goes around here, which can then be, which I will then use some eyelets and some leather cord to braid on here. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And there we have it. Our Chimera, the Peacebringer, is done. Let me just take it down quickly so I can bring it down there. So, I actually cannot believe that this project is done and it's finished, and I'm actually sitting here holding this finished prop in my hands. This is, without a doubt, the coolest thing that I have ever built as a prop or as a cosplay piece, or in fact, anything that I've ever made, any artwork that I've ever done. This is without a doubt the coolest thing I have ever made. One could say it's my magnum opus of being an artist. It's just sitting here holding this, it's just so cool to hold it, and like, just being able to hold the sword and like, so I'm a huge geek when it comes to swords, and like I'm literally just geeking out right now to have something that I created the concept art for, I wrote the lore for, I wrote the fictional world that it exists within, and now to be holding a physical object from that world, it is truly a surreal experience. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey and watching me bring this prop to life. You'll also notice in the background here, the display case is finished that I mentioned a while back in the video. So yeah, it's all put together. I've got a bit of the lore on this gold plaque here, but this is just awesome. So thank you so much for coming on this journey with me to see how I bring this prop to life. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know what you think about the video, what you think about this sword down below in the comment section. I'd really love to know what people think about it, because I think it's pretty cool, and I hope that other people think it's pretty cool as well. If you enjoy this type of cosplay and prop making content, feel free to hit that subscribe button to be notified when I do more content like this. And if there's any other props or costume pieces or armor or anything like that that you'd like to see me try my hand at, try and make, or if you've got any ideas for other things that I should make, perhaps you've heard my story of the fictional world that this prop belongs to and you've got an idea for another prop from that world or something, let me know down below in the comments what you want to see me make next, and I will definitely try to get to it. Thank you so much for watching this video and going on this journey with me. It truly has been an absolute blast. Until next time, this has been Jack's Cosplay.